Hey guys, Ollie of the Vanguard Boys here, bringing you my newest deck profile. Now, I can't entirely take credit. I used a lot of inspiration pretty much from YellowcardVanguard's list in order to create my deck, and I've been extensively playtesting at my locals, even top the other night, only not getting first just because I forgot about a Sentinel Restrict, ironically, even though this deck has the capability to get behind that. But this deck can actually compete, in my opinion, especially against Force decks, which is still going to be reigning strong in the meta. You know, Prism didn't get all of the hits, so you're still going to be going up against decks like that, and you can do a lot of with this deck as well. It's a protect deck that can also make aggressive attacks. So let's go ahead and go into it. And yes, I know it's a lot of protect markers, but this deck actually quite needs it. So let's go ahead and get into the grade 3s. So what's cool about this deck is it uses a lot of old support, but the newest support takes it and elevates it to a new level. So you've got Scarlet Witch Coco here, which one of my favorite abilities for her is she's your first ride target. When she rides over a grade 2, you get the draw card, which is nice plussing. And then if you Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast a grade 3, you get to draw 2 cards, and then you can discard any number of witches, and you'll be able to create more protect markers with that skill. Now, of course, you know, you're going to be using it as your first ride target, so that second skill seems slow, except they did release a promo last year that got reprinted in Clan Collection that allows you to circumvent that and get that ability to add to your hand and create more force markers on your first turn. She's not quite as useful in the later game unless you need to like fix your hand and repair it, but the reason why I'm running her at 4 is because you want to be able to see her in the early game and consistently get to her. Your grade 3s are incredibly important in this deck, and the reason why is the newest grade 3 is Benetwait Witch Yo-Yo, and this deck this card does the heavy lifting of the deck, and its effect works on both your Vanguard circle and your front rear guard circle, which is incredibly important. Basically, once your first attack, if you use your first grade 3, your Vanguard on your first attack to your opponent's Vanguard, at the end of the battle, you discard 2 cards, and you're able to superior ride from your hand, standing another witch from your hand, and you get to do another attack, which is really, really cool. The one thing about witches prior is that they were incredibly slow. They all had pretty good, decent effects, but nothing you could say that was powerful. So 3 attacks, slow abilities you couldn't take advantage of them. You know, you had some that added to your hand, some that had attack abilities, but without that ability to generate a lot of power, you weren't able to take advantage. So this one lets you do that. It lets you basically use 2 grade 3 abilities in one turn, creating your grade 3 lineup into multiple Vanguard abilities. And her secondary ability is really cool. Basically, when she's rode upon, you can do one of 2 things. You can either add a second, another protect marker, so, you add another witch to over her, you get 2 protect markers, or you can call her out to rear guard, so she ensures that you're going to be able to consistently make 4 attacks if she ends up being like your ride target, especially if she ends up being your first ride target. Now, the skill for multi-attacking will only work when your opponent's on grade 3, so you use Scarlet Witch Coco in order to build your hand, set up, find your pieces and things like that, and generate your protect markers. But this card is amazing. I love the artwork. When I first got into Vanguard last year, Justin, I always told him I wanted a deck that had like, waifus with like that were like witches with big hats, but there really wasn't anything besides like Luard, and he ended up handing me Angel Feather, which I fell in love with. So it's kind of full circle that I get to have like an archetype that I really, really love and a clan that I love. So it's the best of both worlds. It's getting my love for Battle Sisters mixed in with a new deck. And then the last grade 3, and this is the one that I kind of had to make an adjustment. In YellowcardVanguard's profile, he ran this at 4, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but I found myself sometimes not hitting a grade 1 when I needed it for writing. So this one is a card that I made a decision to cut to 3 because it's more useful in the late game. And you have a lot of cards in this deck that can draw, search, add, and we'll get to that because one of the newest grade 1s is just insane for the consistency of this deck. So what you'll do with her is when she attacks, you reveal protect markers from your hand, and your front row gains 5k. So 3 of your front row units gain 5k for each protect marker you revealed. So if you have 6 protect markers in your hand, that's plus 30k. And if you have her on grade 3, while she's attacking, and then use Benetwait to ride another one from these hands, you're buffing up your front row by like, 30 and then 35k, or how many ever like protect markers you're having in your hand at that time. So she creates a lot of beefy power. She also has a secondary skill that's on hit, Counterblast 1 to draw a card. That's not really something you want to use. This deck can play very defensively, so you can keep yourself at very low damage. One thing I really like is you don't need any counterblasting until your grade 3 turn, so you can just guard everything on your grade 1 and grade 2 turn, and then pretty much use the other skills to draw and add. But if you have excess Counterblast, because you got hit hard and you need cards in hand, it's useful if they let it hit. So there's a couple of cards in there in the deck that do on hit Counterblast to draw a card that are pretty useful. So let's get into the grade 2 lineup. This is one of the newest cards that I'm loving that came out of the new Clan Collection set, Cobalt Witch Poo Poo. Sorry, immature. When she's placed on Vanguard by riding onto a grade 1, you could discard a card from your hand and get a protect marker. So she's a grade 2 that allows you to get a protect marker early, which when your opponents want to rush you on the early game, especially if you went second, she's very, very useful, because in combination with like your heal trigger guardians, you could pretty much still keep yourself at low damage going into your grade 3 turn, which is really important for your aggressive play back onto your opponent. So that's really, really cool. And then on the rearguard circle, she is absolutely insane, because just like with the Purple Witch Zozo, on attack, you can reveal the protect markers, and she gets 5k for each protect marker for herself. So when you use Zozo's skill twice, it's basically getting it a third time. And you know, when playtesting, I've gotten this unit to go up to over 100,000 with a crit, and you know, your opponent really doesn't necessarily see it coming because they're already having to guard 2 Vanguard attacks, and so she can be a real clinch finisher, and she's going to be a card that your opponent's going to want to go after. Now, the next grade 2 is also new, and this one's got a lot of cool, interesting utility. It's one that's not going to be as quite important, but like in your hand, she can use your protect markers to discard for 20k shields. So for example, one of the matchups I lost was against Mir, and I forgot that like her grade 2s, if they like interact with their damage zone, they gain a sentinel restrict, and I unfortunately had 3 30k crit triggers and like 6 protect markers and no other cards to guard with. If I had kept her in my hand instead of discarding her, I would have been able to guard just fine and possibly have gotten victory on my next turn. So she's useful to keep in the hand because of that. Also, when she's discarded during your turn, you can Soul Blast one to call her out to the rear guard. So for example, on your grade 2 turn, if you don't have a quick shield you want to discard and you want to keep your other pieces, you can use her, discard this unit, and then Soul Blast to call it right back out, so you still get to like have a board, do some attacks on your grade 2 turn, and you know, apply some early pressure, so that way, you know, when you're doing your multiple Vanguard attacks, your opponent still has something to deal with. And then of course she can also intercept to guard with the protect marker as well, just in case you need to before going into your grade 3 turn. So this is a really, really cool unit. It's got a lot of utility with it, and I enjoy it. I think like having cards that discard her effects creates a lot of value for this deck, which you used to be able to discard, because you can use her in combination with Coco as well if you need to. And then lastly, this is what turns Coco's skill on. It's a little bit of a top deck checker. So this is like, you know, Oracle Think Tank known for top deck checking. This is your only way to do it. When you put her into the soul, you just rearrange top 3 cards, but when she's in your soul, she counts as a grade 3. So even if you have to ride this unit because you don't have other grade 2s in hand to ride as a target, she'll still, like, once you ride over her with Scarlet Witch Coco, you get to draw from Coco, and then you could use Coco's skill to counterblast her because she counts as a grade 3 in soul when you have a Witch Vanguard, and still be able to draw 2 and rebuild your hand and use all your searchers and just basically build your board that you didn't have prior. Not to mention, you could really think about your drive checks. There have been some times where, like, you know, your opponent's really aggressively putting you in, you don't have a grade 3 target to re-ride over your Vanguard, so, you know, you can use her to top deck check, and, you know, let's say your third card was the grade 3, you can put her on top because it's at the end of battle skill, so it still allows you to be able to ensure you're going to have multiple Vanguard swings. So very, very solid tech card. Now, here's where I go into the adjustments. I believe on YellowcardVanguard's profile, he had 3 of the Sprout Witch, but I bumped her up to 4 by cutting out a Zozo. The reason why is she's not a bad ride target. She's your... I don't know, I'm hard-pressed to call her the secondary ride target because it's all based off utility. When you ride with the grade 3, you can Soul Blast one, and she calls herself out the rear guard, which if your opponent is trying to calculate how much you have to protect, you can call her out on your second ride, and it calls her out. She also has an on-hit ability to counterblast one when she's boosting and you hit a Vanguard, you counterblast, put it into soul, and draw a card. So she can put herself back into the soul, and then you're able to Soul Blast to like call her out, so she, you know, that way you can boost multiple times, which I will say that's actually kind of like a good utility because you might be able to use her twice with the Vanguard and draw a card out of it too, which can help you rebuild your hand. So while she doesn't do anything while she's on the Vanguard circle, she will allow you to be able to call her back out when you ride a grade 3, which you re-ride multiple grade 3s a lot in this deck. My newest unit, which is basically along with Benetoy, that just like fixes the deck, is Citrine Witch Mumu. And with Mumu, she does a lot. So when she's on your Vanguard, when she's ridden over by a unit with Witch in its name, you get a draw card. So, you know, you go into your grade 2 turn, you ride over whatever grade 2, draw a card, and if you have the other Witch that creates a protect marker, you can discard whatever card you need to be able to create your protect marker early and get a lot of value. But its rear guard skill is absolutely where the value comes from. So you Soul Blast one and you rest it. You look at top 5 cards, and you just add any card which in its name, and you could choose up to 3 to reveal to your opponent. If you reveal 3, she will not go into the soul. But let's say you see another one of these soul, but you don't see a target you want to hit. Don't reveal 3. Put her back into soul, call out the other one, and use it again, and kind of like create a little mini loop with it, and then just do it until you find the pieces. You're going to be deck compressing while you're doing that and adding pieces to your hand. So sometimes if I end up drawing both of these on my first turn, I will ride her and then use her, and then immediately first turn skill, use her, grab something. I will reveal 3 at that point, so that way on my next turn I could do it again, and you're just slowly adding pieces every single turn and kind of just abusing it as much as possible. So really solid card. I think it's you don't have to run the grade 3 searchers with that card in the deck. And then lastly, you just play 2 of the Oracle Guardians Gemini, which is from BTO1. That's what's really cool. This deck uses a lot of old cards to create a really strong deck. But simply put, you use him to countercharge. Like I said, you play very defensively. If you're at 3 damage and you have him in your hand, you can continue to keep guarding your opponent so that way your damage stays low. And then you just put him into Soul, which fixes your Soul as well. Countercharge, and then you can do your rewrite ability without having to worry. So you can keep your damage as low as possible, and then being able to still execute your skills without having to, while being able to pressure your opponent. And the trigger lineup is pretty simple. So you run the obviously the Heal Guardians, because like I said, you want to keep your damage low, so if you end up drawing into these early, you know, you can use them to like bump up your front grow, minus crits, things like that, because you don't need any counterblast going into your grade 2 turn. If you're going first, you just need 1 counterblast to get Coco's skill, and if you're going second, you get 2 counterblasts, so that way you can get Coco's skill off and Benetoit's skill off. That way you can do the drawing and the multi-attacking. And we're going for a 12 crit lineup with this deck. So of course, you're going to be running the crit Sentinels. 30k shields are super nice, especially if your opponent's trying to be really aggressive with you. Nice 1-card guard a lot of the times too, so that way you're not getting smacked by you know, Force 2 decks, you know, since they're not going to be gaining as much power. And then of course, because we're running 12 crits, your opponent really has to worry about your drive checks, because if you're hitting crit triggers, you're going to be smacking them for a lot of damage, while also having 2 units that are gaining power if you got Zozo on the Vanguard at all. So that card's really nice. And the reason why you don't need the draw triggers is your deck does a lot of searching, adding, drawing, and of course you have the protect markers for your Sentinel Perfect Guards. And then of course we're running the Battle Sister crit and the Oracle Guardian crit, you know, just bump up the waifus. So yeah, I think this deck is really solid, has a lot of potential. I've been having a lot of fun with it. It's finally nice to be able to not be having to worry about your lineup going against like force decks a lot, which I still think that Prism is going to be a problem. I think Aqua should have gotten hit with at least a lot. You know, they can, you know, those decks fix their hands, and pretty much all the Bermuda clan wants to use it, but we get it's really popular. So hoping the B is a lot more of a refreshing format. I'm kind of having a lot more fun with it than I expected to be, with Hamiel being hit and Ramiel not being what I really want from the deck. So yeah guys, I hope you like this deck profile, and again, thank you to YellowcardVanguard for the inspiration for the build. There are some other witches that like have some interesting ideas, but I think this is the best way to play it, because you know, Mimi, she's a top deck checker, you know, put a card on bottom or top, but you know, it's kind of slow, it only does it once. You have this other grade 2 that like when you ride over, or when it's ridden over, you can Soul Blast a draw card, which in theory, Coco, that would allow you to draw 2, was a lot of Soul Blasting pretty early. And this other grade 3, it's a counter blast to draw a card, and you have other counter blasts that are a lot more important. So I really think this is the best way to play the deck, and allows you to use your grade 3s multiple times in a turn and get those abilities to pop off. Alright guys, so I hope you appreciate the video. If you liked it, feel free to give us a subscribe, like, comment on the video, and you guys have a great day, and give that like button a boom.